Hi everyone, I'm making my first video. I'm not very experienced at this. I've never done this before, but I'm getting ready to update my very outdated kitchen. So I'm hoping this will be a success story and not a comical disaster. I've decided to use Beyond Paint because I've researched a lot of different products and it seemed to be the best thing for someone to use who doesn't really know what they're doing. So I am going to paint my countertops, backsplash, and cabinets. But right now I'm starting on my countertops and my backsplash. So as you can see behind me, I have a very outdated kitchen. I've got these orangey cabinets and this baby blue laminate countertop with a baby blue tile backsplash. So there's a lot in this kitchen. I have about 102 square feet of countertop and backsplash that I've got to paint because I also have a bar here that has to be painted as well that goes all the way around. And then there's my stove area and everything here. So today I just started with cleaning and clearing out. I'm going to take my time doing this since I've never done it before. You could probably do this in a weekend, but I'm going to take a couple of weeks. I may let it cure for 30 days. So I made us a coffee bar and things like that. And then I also have my supply table over here just to get all organized. So I have cleaned the countertops and backsplash just with vinegar water right now. And I've dug out all the old growth caulk. And I'm going to put a nice fresh bead of caulk where the countertop meets the backsplash everywhere. Because that's all going to be painted. So I want it to be nice and clean and no mildew or bumps or anything. And even though the paint says you don't have to strip or sand or any of those things, I am going to do a light sanding tomorrow. So before I sand, I'm going to use Simple Green, which they recommended as a degreaser to make sure everything is really clean. So I'm going to sand after that, and then I'm going to clean again with Simple Green and make sure that it's as pristine as it can be and that I'll have the best chance for this stuff to stick. So today just caulk, tomorrow sanding, cleaning, and then taping off and prepping because that is probably the worst part. The actual paint I think will be very easy, but if I don't tape it off and prep right, it's not going to look good at all. So, I hope this works. I'll check in with you later. Bye. Good morning. It's day 2 of my kitchen renovation. This morning I've been at work just cleaning thoroughly with Simple Green and sanding my countertops and backsplash. So I bought this little Black & Decker sander, and most of the information that I got said use 220 grit, which is pretty fine. And I've gone through several of these little discs, so you need quite a few to be able to do it. And then in some of the hard to reach places, I used a little block of 220 grit, and like this, and went all behind the sink and everything. I even used some sheets of sandpaper to get some of those hard to reach areas. So I've taped off the electrical outlets just so that sand and everything didn't get in those. And so I'm getting ready to clean again to get all the sanding dust off of it. And then I'm going to start taping everything off. So I'll check back with you after I've gotten it all taped off. Good morning, day 3 of my kitchen renovation. I have taped off everything except the kitchen sink. I've saved that for last because this is critical that I do this correctly or it's really going to be messed up. So I'm very meticulously taping around the sink and hoping that my lines are going to look good. I've already taped off my cabinets and, you know, around my vent hood and underneath all the cabinets so that I don't get paint in all the wrong places. So I'm going to finish up this sink taping and then I'll start the painting. Okay, I have everything taped off to the best of my abilities. I'm just really concerned about this sink area because I know I'm a messy painter and I really don't want to get paint on my sink. So, I'm getting ready to start. I'm going to stir up this paint because I don't know if you really need to, but I'm just used to doing that when I paint, so I'm going to stir it up. I'm going to save my island for last because I'll kind of use that as my workstation. So I've chosen this off-white paint for my countertops, and I'm going to be adding some speckles to it. My cabinets much later on are going to be a darker color. And also I'm going to be putting a stencil on my backsplash. So I'm going to start with my first coat. I'm stirring this up a little bit. It's really thick. So I knew that because I've, done a lot of tests on some different things to check my colors and make sure this is really what I wanted to go with. So I don't think it really makes a lot of difference about stirring it, but creature of habit, you always stir paint, right? Okay, so it's really thick. I've got my 9-inch, 3/8 inch nap roller that's kind of like a microfiber, but it's for smooth to semi-smooth surfaces, which is what is recommended. So here I go, starting my first coat over here on this back area. So just going to try to get a nice amount of paint on here. Let's start rolling it on. Here we go. Now obviously I'm going to have to use a paint brush to get in these smaller areas, but I'm just going ahead and rolling on this first coat here with this, and then I'll go back with the brush. So I've taped all this area off really well so that I don't have to worry about how messy I am. I'm getting the front parts too. So, and they say to overlap your strokes. So I'm going to turn this off so that you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. I'll check back with you. Okay, this is my first coat on this back area here. I'm just going to leave it and let it dry for a little while before I move on. Probably don't have to, but I'm just trying to make sure I do this right. They say don't worry too much about brush strokes and that sort of thing, especially on the first coat because it'll all level out. So I'm just going to put all my paint and everything in a trash bag while I take a little break and see what it looks like. It looks like I've got good coverage. I did go back with my paintbrush and make sure there weren't any big globs somewhere to dry. So hey, I'm on my way. See you in a bit. Okay, I just finished my first coat of everything. So I've got my backsplash done, my bar done, all around the kitchen. So, the first coat doesn't look that great. This is the first part that I did, and I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of bleeding through of that old blue color, but that's okay. And they say don't worry about the brush strokes, and I'm going to let this dry really good. I think the next thing that I'm going to do is put my second coat on my backsplash first, because I'm going to do my stencil on there. So I'm going to wait till all of it's very dry. I'm going to cover up my countertops, put the second coat of the backsplash on, let it dry, do my stencil, let it dry, then I'll do my second coat of my countertops, because I need to immediately do my flex on that. So here we go. Hopefully this is going to be great, or we can all laugh about it together. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I've been waiting forever to have the money to do this, to pay to have new countertops and cabinets. And it's like, when is that going to be? Never. I mean, inflation is far exceeding my wages. So, hey, what the heck? $200 or $300 in supplies and my time. I'm just going for it. I won't be any worse off if it doesn't work out. So, I'll follow up with you again later. Bye. Okay, I've got the whole first coat on that's drying. I put the second coat on my island, and I have sprinkled the flecks on there. I'm hoping that that's showing up good in the video. So now this particular part will wait until next weekend, which is when I'll put sealer on it. Some of those little flecks will come off when I wipe it off or give it a light sand. I'm waiting over here. I'm going to start my stencil on the backsplash. So it still seems to be drying a little bit. It's been almost 3 hours, but I can still see some wet spots. So I'm going to wait, because I'm going to cover the counter and not do the second coat on the counter until after I do the second coat on the backsplash and the stencil. So it'll be a little bit later. Okay, I'm done for today. I have put the second coat and the speckles on my island. I have put the second coat on all of my backsplash. It's drying here, here, and over here. So it seems like it's taken a little bit longer for things to dry. They had said 2 hours between coats, but things have been tacky up to 3 hours. And I don't want to start my stencil until my backsplash is totally dry. And, then I'm going to have to wait after I paint my stencil until it's totally dry before I can put my second coat on my countertops, because I want to put the sprinkles on there and I don't want them to stick to my backsplash. But here is my comic fail. This is my, let's see if I can get it down here. That is my stencil try. Just my example that I painted on a piece of paper to test it. So this is bad. So I'm going to have to figure out a better way to do this. I mean, if I mess it up, no big deal. I'll just paint over it. But I want it to look good. So anyway, that's what I'm going to work on tomorrow, is the stencil on the backsplash. See you tomorrow. Day 4 of my countertop and backsplash renovation. Yesterday, the last thing I did was put my second coat on my backsplash and just left it to dry, because it seemed like it was taking a lot longer than I thought for it to dry properly. And now today I've got my stencils taped to my backsplash over here. I'm planning on putting 3 of those up there. This is a very scary part for me because I'm really afraid that it's going to bleed. I'm going to use the paint color that I plan on using for my cabinets later. It's called Pebble by Beyond Paint. I'm going to put 3 stencils on the back over here. I only have 2 stencils, so I've got the 2 taped up at each end, and then I'll put another one in the middle. And then I'm planning on putting at least 1 stencil over my range. So I'm very afraid it's going to bleed, but if it does, then what the heck? I can paint over it. So we shall see. I'm going to use a 4-inch roller to do it, and we'll see how that turns out. See you soon. Okay, I've already made a mistake. I should have taped down the entire perimeter of the stencil. I already made a mistake and went over the side of the stencil. So that's an area I'm going to have to touch up with the off-white paint. And God only knows if there's bleeds. So we'll see. Okay, I've got the first coat of my stencils over here. I'm waiting for that to dry, the first coat. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I've decided to go ahead and tape off a row on my backsplash in areas where I don't need to be worried about a stencil, and put that second coat of countertop paint on and the speckles. So it's still to be determined if the stencils are going to look good, but I'll just worry about that later. So here we go with round 2. Today I've got a new paint roller liner, and I'm going to use a new roller, just so that everything is nice and fresh and there's no crusties on the one left from yesterday. So I will keep up with it and show you my progress. Okay, so while I was painting my second coat on my countertops and doing the speckles, the timer went off. It had been 2 hours since I put the first coat on my stencils. So I've applied a second coat, and it still remains to be seen if this is going to look good. So we'll figure that out later, but you can see, I'm not good at this really. I taped off my backsplash now because when I put that second coat on the countertops, I didn't want the backsplash to get wet, because if I did, the flex would stick to it. So I had to tape that part off. Now I should tell you that when I was taking the paint off of the countertop, before I put that second coat on, that some of my tape had stuck a little bit. So I had to very gingerly pull that away with, tweezers and just whatever I could do to keep it from messing up the paint. And so when I taped off the backsplash this time, I didn't put it so near the seam, because it was okay if I got a little bit of that wet. I just didn't want the flex sticking to that backsplash. So we shall see. I'm getting ready to paint the second coat on my bar top and do the speckles, and then hopefully it'll be time to take the stencil off and see what happened back there. See you soon. Okay, my first epic fail in this project. I did the stencils. They look horrible. A lot of bleeding through. It just looks bad. So, dang it. I'm going to have to let that dry, and then I'll paint over it with just my off-white color. No more stencils. That's just not going to work. But I have another idea that I'm going to try. So I'm thinking I'm going to get some kind of peel and stick design. I don't want a lot of stuff, but I want something up there. So something not too wild that I can just stick on there, and then I can seal over it. So we shall see. But in the meantime, I've done my flex everywhere here and over here. It's all done. All my second coat and my flex are done. I don't know how well you can see that in this video, but that's looking real good. So next weekend I'll be wiping that down because some of the flex won't stick, and then sealing everything. So in the meantime, I can look for something that I can stick on those backsplash tiles and seal over that. See you soon. Good morning. We're at the second weekend of my countertop and backsplash renovation. I stopped working last Sunday. I had to work, and so that was good. I just let everything sit and cure. I did, because of the mess up on my backsplash, I painted over that stencil that was horrendous, and I bought these little stick-on decals for back there, and I think they look really good. I'm going to start sealing today, putting the top coat on. I've chosen this General Finishes water-based top coat high performance gloss to use. And I've got, new rollers, paint brushes, paint liner, my nitro gloves. Before I start, I'm going to use just a soft cloth that's wet and wipe everything down one more time to make sure there's no loose flex on here. And after that dries, I'll make sure everything's taped back up well and start my top coat. So we shall see. I did get a little bit nervous about the tape just sitting here all week. So I went ahead and took the tape off around my sink, and I did have a couple of little pools of the paint there. So it was good that I did that because I was able to touch that up and put some more of the flex on there and let that sit all week. And I know that I keep saying speckles and stuff about these flex, but they are called flex. And, it's like a shaker bottle that you just shake the stuff out. And the other thing I may not have mentioned is that when you do that on vertical surfaces, you have to basically just throw it up there and get it to stick. So obviously the paint has to be wet to do that. So you have to have a wet coat of paint to put the flex on to get them to stick. I also decided that I didn't like the way that the backsplash around my sink looked when I did not put the flex on that. So I added that this week, and I think that it looks really good like that because that's laminate. It's laminate material as well. So the places where I have the decals, that's the tile that I painted. And I think it's looking really good. I'm excited. So as long as I don't mess up this top coat, we're in business. So I'll check back with you later. Okay, first coat of top coat done. When in doubt, always use a new brush, because sometimes if you think your brush is clean, it's not, and then you get little speckles and things on your top coat, and then you have to wipe it off with your finger. So yeah, you want that to be nice and clean and no drip lines. I have gone around with a brush and roller, new brush, new roller, and, you know, had to go back and get drips. If all of this were just the tops and no vertical places, it would have been much easier. But since I have a lot of vertical spaces, like the edges of the countertops and the backsplash, you know, there's always that issue of the possibility of drip lines. So I'm going to wait about 3 hours, make sure it's nice and dry, and go back and do coat 2. Check back with you later. Okay, I just finished my second coat of top coat. So I'm done with these countertops and backsplash. I'm just waiting for that to dry. I hope that you can see some of this well in this video. That's around my stove area, and those decals that I bought seem to be working just fine. Here's around my sink. I did use just like a little paintbrush to go around the edges of the sink because I definitely want that sealed well. But I've got my bar done and my island, and over here, which was where I tried my stencils that were a disaster. So I think these little decals were a good idea and, you know, pretty much foolproof. So while this is drying, I've just decided to undertake another project. I've got some beadboard under my bar where my bar stools go, and I'm going to put a couple of coats of that clear coat on it because it seems like it, you know, it gets tomato sauce on it and stuff, and when you try to clean it off, then it has removed the paint a couple of times. I've had to repaint it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll get back on when I've taken all the tape off and it's just all back together again. I am going to wait at least 7 days to put anything on the countertops. And then we're going to use them very gingerly for probably 30 days because I may be being overly cautious, but you know, the thing now is to see how durable all of this is. So until then, and so the countertops and backsplash are done. I have my second coat of top coat on everything. I have my blue tape off. I have my stove pushed back in place. My refrigerator back in place. My island is done. I'm very pleased with my decals on this backsplash here. So I did have a few little snafus with my blue tape. So I mean, you just have to be really careful taking that stuff off because sometimes it gets stuck with the paint and the top coat. So very, very careful with taking your tape off. I had to use some tweezers. I had to use a putty knife. I had to use a screwdriver. I am going to have to do just some very, very minor paint touch-ups, basically of my walls. The paint on the countertops and everything looks just fine. I don't see any reason to touch that up at all. So I'm just going to leave it alone tonight. Tomorrow I will put on my electrical outlet covers. But it's done. So we're going to wait a full 7 days before we put everything back on the counters, the coffee pot and everything. Again, I might be being overly cautious, but I just want to give this the best chance. So my next project, when I have time and the energy, will be to paint my cabinets. So until then, Goodbye.